there's never a time where it's not the right time to advocate. I think there probably is this misconception that advocacy is always disruption and banging on doors. Sometimes it's just having coffee with someone and building a relationship.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Rich Brubaker, founder of Collective Responsibility, here to another episode of the Mission Driven Podcast. Through this podcast, I speak with mission-driven entrepreneurs. For me, this is all about inspiring and equipping the next generation of aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking out and seeing challenges that are coming to scale, things that are personal to them, things that they want to take action on, and are looking for inspirational stories, looking for pathways forward, looking for those who've done it before them and can be inspired and equipped through them to do a little bit more in their own communities. In this episode, I'm joined by Charli Cooksey, who's the founder and CEO of WEPOWER St. Louis. It's a social enterprise that activates community power to redesign education, economic, health, and justice systems to be just and equitable for all. Charli, thank you very much for taking the time to join us, the mission that you're on, the community that you're working with. And as a starting point, would you mind introducing yourself and actually the mission that you're on?
So thanks for having me. My name is Charli. I'm a St. Louis native, born and raised, and I have the honor and sometimes challenge of serving as the founder and CEO of WEPOWER. And we exist to hold space for Black and Latinx community members to reimagine and dream of a future that recognizes and honors their humanity and dignity. And then we hold space for them not to only reimagine that future, but to build and wield enough power to bring that future to bear. And so that happens in a few ways. One way is we train as many community members as possible on how to design policies and new laws, and then how to change and advocate for policy change. And we've activated 400 community leaders through leadership training. And we also believe not only should we shift policies and laws, we have to shift the economic conditions in our neighborhoods. So we work with really amazing Black and Latinx entrepreneurs who are ready to take their business to the next level and create living wage jobs in our most marginalized communities.
What was the original idea or the original pain point that you were focused on?
So I'm a St. Louis native, like I mentioned, and grew up in North St. Louis City, which has a long history of being a place that has experienced systemic racism, redlining, disinvestment, has been hit really hard with failing schools, and limit to school options has been impacted by a lot of poverty and crime. And so all of the things that we think about when it comes to inequity and injustice, you can see all of those things colliding in the neighborhood that I was born and raised in. And so ever since I was a little girl, I've grown up navigating these tells of two cities within a single St. Louis. And so that has really shaped the work I do and why I do it. So many, if not almost all of our big decisions in our region are made in boardrooms with older, wealthy white men. And I recognize that all the things that we talk about as social issues are all connected to power. And you can directly correlate the power that a group or community has to their well-being. The more power and influence the community has, the more likely their health outcomes, their educational outcomes, their economic outcomes are going to be good. And the less power, or the more that a community's power is suppressed, you'll see all types of disparities. So between seeing what was happening on the ground in Ferguson after Mike Brown's murder, and just being in all these boardrooms, and also seeing the way that our young people could only be served so much through direct service, it became clear that we had to create something that was about solving this power problem and making sure more folks in our region were able to activate power towards their needs and dreams.
Was there a certain group that you wanted to work with? Was there a certain outcome that you wanted to have? Or were you just finding little programs and little ideas to get started?
That first initiative that we piloted was called the Power Building Academy. And so we worked with 16 women where they learned about the history of our education system. They learned community organizing skills. They learned about different social movements. They did some amazing things as a cohort and engaged 5,000 voters in just the few months that they've gone through the pilot cohort. And now they're still engaged in our work. That was 6 years ago. And now we call them the OGs. There's 4 of them in particular that canvas with us every day and knock on doors and talk to voters. And we started off with testing out this idea of what does it look like to have a group of everyday people come together and push for policy change and political change. And it sparked into something really cool.
When it comes to policy change, political change, are there certain barriers that need to be broken down? Are there certain laws that are just really asinine and holding back the whole community? How do you focus on those given the fact that, the power structure, as you mentioned, it's old and it's white in St. Louis and it's held in these boardrooms. What are you looking to change right away, and how do you kind of plot the path?
System change is messy and complicated, and there's never just one thing or even two things you can do to really achieve that tipping point. And so the idea is that we're creating this sort of ecosystem of leaders of all kinds who are working together. So we have the folks on the ground coordinating and communicating with the folks in office, and then vice versa. And the other one I'll add is the importance of storytelling and shifting public narrative. We're always trying to get in the news and in the media to tell and build awareness around why early childhood is in crisis and why it should matter to everyone. Because there's this really harmful mental model that childcare is babysitting, and it's like a 99% woman workforce. And so no shock that those women are underpaid, overworked, no benefits, and we're all just living our best lives relying on these women to care for everyone's baby. So we try to do a lot about getting good media and press about this challenge and why, and getting other people to care about it like we do.
And how much of this impact in terms of, say, early childhood education is going to come from the community itself coming together, putting forward policies, and how much of it is just within the community also starting to develop kind of a business model where you're building resilience within your own communities, within these women, within their family structures?
So, I mean, most of these childcare providers and centers they're business women, but there isn't, to your point, no, there isn't a business model the way there is for other businesses and social systems. So, like for K-12 education, the system is funded through property taxes, through state funding, and through federal funds. For early childhood, pretty much the only funding there is a few dollars they get from the state. Some of our childcare providers have not been paid for their time in over 6 months. And so people are taking out mortgages, second mortgages on their home to keep their centers open. They're working multiple jobs while still running. I mean, it's criminal the way that they have to navigate being a good business leader and caring for our babies and not have the right revenue streams for them to be able to stay open. So we have to come up with a better business model, which is going to rely on us, frankly, paying some more taxes so that we can collectively care for our babies.
When you started this, how much of this do you think that you knew, like at granular process detail? I mean, you probably felt all of it. You probably had some intuitions about some of it, but how much have you learned through this process over the last 6 years of building these programs, engaging stakeholders, diving into policies? Like, as an entrepreneur and a leader, what has this learning process been like for you?
Yeah, well, I know this is going to sound crazy, but almost everything I dreamed of is happening. What I didn't know, and I should have known, is how fiercely people protect the status quo and how we can be our own worst enemies. I never would have predicted the level of pushback about things to me that are so fundamental. Yeah, I'm learning a lot about being staying committed to my belief in excellence and rigor, and going big because we have to go big given the challenges that we're up against.
You have education, policy, economics, entrepreneurialism, all within your organization. Like, how do you navigate that complexity or that many things as a leader of your organization?
Well, there's always a moment. That's what I've learned a lot about, I think, just in studying other social movements, and moments often can drive what is the priority. So around 2018, 2019, there was like all these crises surfacing in the childcare sector. It was starting to be on the news all the time about like childcare centers having to close, or someone mistreating a baby. And so there was this moment in time where people were like, oh, wait, we got to pay attention to this and solve for this. I think that drives what is the right thing to do, or the most strategic thing to do by year, but also because we do like electoral work and political work, elections drive our work. So we're very focused this year on trying to take advantage of the November ballot because we know people will be paying attention. And so that means that we're focused on leveraging the November election to drive folks out to vote, not only in the presidential election, but also to vote for increasing funding for early childhood. So it's a lot, and it is a matter of making tough decisions. And I wish that we could prioritize less. We have to meet the moment and take advantage of those windows that you may not be able to access again.
What's the work that you're doing with entrepreneurs, be it, aspiring in the community, trying to build their first business, or as you mentioned, scaling up their business? I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't have the luxury of thinking about things too much. They just have to move forward. How do you help them? And then how do you, over time, monitor that progress differently than, say, the policy change?
In terms of our model, we have two main components. One is access to diverse types of capital. So we provide grants, zero interest loans, and revenue-based investments because we know the traditional venture capital model does not work for most entrepreneurs. And then the other lever is programming and holistic programming. So we have a business accelerator where folks get access to business coaching, technical services like accounting, legal support, HR support, marketing and branding support. We even cover the cost for them to go to therapy and counseling. We try to wrap our arms around them as much as we can over a short amount of time. And then once they complete our accelerator, they're pretty much always part of the WePower community. And if they call, we try to be there.
How many entrepreneurs have you supported over this time? And are you finding there's a process, there's a common challenge, a common barrier that they all face that you can address right away? Or do you find that each one really is its own entrepreneur that they require their own support, kind of one-on-one?
The challenge, that capital piece is really challenging because traditional bank loans aren't the right fit for our entrepreneurs, at least not yet. So that continues to be a perennial challenge. And I'd say the other one is trying to get folks to work on the business instead of be in the business. So trying to support them with truly becoming the boss and being committed to infrastructure building and growing the team and growing the right partnerships and business model versus being stuck in the weeds and the day-to-day operations of the business.
And is that something you do through your staff? Have you built a core of mentors and advisors that, voluntarily or pro bono help these entrepreneurs? Like how do you support so many people?
Yeah, it's a both and. So we have full-time team members committed to working with entrepreneurs, but a large network of mentors and assistants, folks and business coaches and consultants. Businesses are so niche, so it will never work if we were to try and solve it all with our team. And so we try to recognize the complexity of running a business and tap into the right subject matter experts.
Yeah, you have to not just build, but also empower this community, as it's growing. And are there funds available? Are there other organizations like yourself that are participating in this? Or are you having to build the ship as you go along for yourself?
Yeah, it's a both and. We've been very fortunate to have some seed funders who believed in me and the vision and have taken a leap of faith to say, let's put some resources behind it and see where it goes. For other folks, it's been building a proof of concept and then trying to make the case and them still saying no and us just being nimble and saying, all right, that doesn't stop the show. But we've been very fortunate to access a diverse base of supporters from across the country. So we have a nice mix of national funding and local funding. And I will say the national funding community is a lot more aligned the work that we do than the local funding community. And just it's all about relationships too. So a no today doesn't mean a no a year from now. So just trying to ground our work and our ability to sustain ourselves in relationships and really understanding each other and figuring out when the time is right to work together.
What do you attribute the national level alignment to? Because oftentimes with the community kind of oriented or rooted organization, they find their sources often locally. What do you attribute that difference to? And do you think that you'll find more locally over time as your focus shifts more towards the infrastructure and the policy, or is it just a matter of time as the movement itself grows, matures, and starts to really, support itself?
I think we're going to continue to have to navigate the challenge that local philanthropy is not necessarily aligned to that the way we need it to be. Business, civic, philanthropic community are often the folks who have maintained the status quo. And so we can't rely on them all of a sudden to fund the disruption of it. So that is a constant dynamic and tension. Also, we're a very risk-averse region, and so the work we do is risky, and it's hard to get risk-averse people to fund risky work. But I have hope, and I think that if we keep building the proof points and trying to build relationships and have uncomfortable conversations and hear other people's thoughts and hold space for them to hear ours, I think we'll get to a day where we have stronger local support.
But do you need to solve things or do you need to create something new?
My bias is to create something new, but it takes time to create new things, and it takes a level of like radicalness, and we can't ignore what exists and what's doing harm while trying to build the new. And so a lot of our work is how do we mitigate the harm that is being done by existing things, and that is a level of reform and like incrementalism, but we can't ignore it because like babies are still going to childcare centers, so we can't just say like, so we have to do a both and approach, and hopefully get to a day where we have had enough time to build the new, and we've done enough to slow the bleeding or the harm of the existing system. We can make that flip, but it's hard to do one over the other. Although I get energy and uh, uh, purpose from designing and creating the new.
Is that energy pulling you through the hard days? What gets you through some of the challenging days where you're just, you're hitting a wall? Is it just knowing that you're on the right vision? Is it seeing the past success? Is it a fuel source from, the experience you've had in the past? Like, what fuels you through this work?
Very vision driven, and I have very, very colorful, distinct visions of what the future could and should be. And so literally the energy from knowing that that vision is possible and like one more thing is a step closer is very energizing. And also just the accountability to community uh, when I know that there are child care providers, Black women that are working 18-hour days to care for so many folks in our region, then it's like, how can I not go hard? It's my responsibility.
Looking back, you've been at this for 6 years. What are some of the big successes or some of the things that like make you smile when you're on the way home, thinking like, wow, we've accomplished something. Things are clicking.
We sat in on a call that like 40 childcare providers had with a state leader. And I mean, they were just giving it to the state and they didn't let up. I was like, this is it. This is what it looks like for this to be a community-led process and for folks to really advocate for what they need and deserve. Moments like that where I get to literally just sit back and get out the way, and see things unfold beautifully in a decentralized and community-driven way. In terms of impact, we've won like almost $20 million in public funding for early childhood. We have several of our alumni who are now elected leaders or running for office. We have entrepreneurs that are opening up brick and mortars and scaling and raising lots of follow-on capital and hiring people. So that's been really cool. And I think the other most cool part is the intersection of those. Been cool to see the cross-pollination and the way that I envision this ecosystem of diverse business and community leaders coming together. Those moments are really exciting too.
So tell me about the ecosystem that you have in your office and that is really supporting the work that you guys are doing. Like, what kind of team do you have? Are they advocates? Are they educators? Are they entrepreneurs? And who are you trying to surround yourself with so you guys can have the biggest scale possible?
Yeah, we have a pretty diverse mix of folks. We have folks who come from the like tech startup background and world. We have folks who come from the fundraising and marketing world. We have folks who are coming from the social work field, and it works together because we have all these diverse perspectives creating this like beautiful mosaic of ideas and solutions and challenging one another.
Yeah, I really look at like kind of how do organizations create movements by one being advocates, but actually just by doing the work more than say advocacy itself. And I'm really like within the office, is there a balance that exists there? Like you're there for the mission, you're there to advocate for a group, a cause, a movement? Or is it really just like we have to focus on building the work and building the systems so that the changes is self-evident? It just comes together through that process.
Yeah, there's never a time where it's not the right time to advocate. But I think there probably is this misconception that advocacy is always like disruption and banging on doors or like lift. Sometimes it's just having coffee with someone and building a relationship. All of this goes back to relationships. So every week we're supposed to be having a certain amount of one-on-ones and coffee dates with community members because is the that is the foundation of advocacy work. Advocacy looks different depending on the day, but we always have to stay committed to that work because we can't afford not to.
And what's your vision for the next 5, 10 years of your work in the organization? What are you hoping for? What's your vision for impact, scale, success? What are some of the big pieces?
I would love to see a day where every baby and every family has access to a high quality, affordable seat where their baby is cared for and loved on, and the caretakers and educators get the resources and wages and benefits they deserve so they can be fully well as they care for our babies. So going from 47,000 to 90,000 seats is a big vision, which means I wouldn't complain if we were to be one of the first but not last states in the country to fully fund early childhood. And the other one is that we are starting to shift from reimagining our economy to actually transforming it. And I still don't know what that will look like until we publish this playbook with recommendations. But I'm excited for us to reshape how the economy functions because it just works for way too few of us, and it's not sustainable this way.
If you're speaking to another aspiring mission-driven entrepreneur, what are 2 or 3 pieces of advice you'd give them?
Never stop being a learner. You can learn from anything and anyone. And if you set a vision, commit to it. It's going to be hard, but that doesn't mean you waver.